Today you're going to learn Angular 8 from scratch as a beginner. Before we begin, this video is sponsored by Linode. Now, Linode supplies servers that let you deploy apps, sites, and services that are both flexible and scalable. Linode's one-click apps make it easy to set up a web stack or a WordPress instance in under a minute. Simple pricing starting at $5 per month ensures there's no hidden fees or surprise bills. So sign up with the link below and use this code right here to receive a free $20 credit on your Linode account. Hey everyone, what's up? Gary Simon of CourseEtro.com, and for those of you who followed me, you've known that every time that there's a new version of Angular that comes out, I do a quick crash course for beginners. So if you've watched my previous crash courses on Angular, it's probably not worth watching this one. This is for people who are just getting into it and want to learn with the latest version of Angular. All right, so I'm going to show you what we're going to build today. So it's kind of like a real simple playground app where we learn a lot of the core concepts associated with Angular. So this includes learning how to install it, basic templating, data binding, style and class binding, the router, fetching data from an API with the HTTP client, deployment, and of course, much, much more. All right, so there's a written version of this tutorial that you can also use to follow along. It's linked in the description. And also you should know HTML, CSS, and basic JavaScript before trying to learn Angular, Vue, or React or anything like that. All right, so as always, make sure to subscribe and let's get started. All right, so let's talk about installation and getting everything installed. So up here I have the Windows 10 terminal preview ready to rock in a code folder. And first you're gonna need Node.js, first of all, to install the Angular CLI or the command line interface, which allows you to install and get started in managing your Angular 8 projects. So to test whether or not you actually have Node.js installed, we can just type in anywhere, it doesn't matter which folder you're in, node-v, and it'll give you the current version. npm-v as well for the Node package manager, same thing. If those go unrecognized, then you're gonna head on over to nodejs.org and install it and download it based on your OS and all that, and get it installed. And then once it's done installing with all the default options, if I can get this out of here, then you can go ahead and reload your command line or your console and you'll be ready to rock. You can run these commands and they'll work. So what we'll do now is install the Angular CLI, and you do that with npm, and we're going to type in install, or shorthand you could just do I for install, -G for global, meaning it's going to install it where you only have to do it once on your machine, and you can access it from any folder essentially, and Angular/CLI. So hit enter, that will install it. I already installed mine earlier today, so I know it's up to date. All right, so now we can then type in ng new and then the name of our project. So I'm going to call mine, let's see, my-app. All right, so it's going to ask you, would you like to add Angular routing? Why, yes, we would. So let's hit Y. And for the style sheet format we'd like to use, we're going to use SAS here, SESS. All right, so basically Angular routing, we added that because it allows you to create routes between your different components in your app. All right, so this is going to install. I'll go ahead and just pause while this gets going. All right, it's done installing. And so now what we want to do is hop into cd my-app or whatever name you gave it. And now I'm going to type in code period. And am I sitting on top of these? No, you can still see it. That's good. And this is just going to load or open up Visual Studio Code, which is my code editor, and it's going to open it up in the current folder right here. But before we actually hop into that, I do want to run the project. All right, so we're going to type in ng serve -o, and that will open up the browser. And so what this is doing, the O flag, like I said, is optional, but it opens up the default browser to localhost 4200 momentarily. And while you're working on developing your Angular 8 app, it's always good to run this. If I can get this window over here, thank you. This is the default, just the boilerplate app that they create. But yeah, running ngserve-o, this gives you hot reloading. So every time you modify or update a file, this will reload automatically in your browser. So you can start working and debugging your project and all that good stuff. So we're going to minimize this for now, and we're also going to get out of here. We're just going to minimize that. We're going to go back to our, no, not Discord. We're going to go back to our project right here. All right, so first of all, let's talk about the folder structure. It's worth dedicating a little bit of time to outline the important files and the folders that you're going to be commonly working in, and also understand some of the under the hood stuff that makes Angular 8 work. So the folder and file structure. Let's go over the just some of these basic ones. So E2E, this is end-to-end testing. We're not going to be covering testing in this course, so you don't have to worry about that. Node modules, just because we used npm to install our dependencies, you're never going to be working in this folder either. And then also, a source contains much of our code. And app is where you're going to spend most of your time writing your Angular 8 code, working with components and the routing files and all that good stuff. All right, and then also we have index.html, and we can see we have this app root right here, this custom HTML element. This is basically the entry point of the app. You're really not going to be working within index.html unless you're going to be adding certain imports, like adding fonts if you want to go that route. We're going to do it differently though. And then also we have styles.scss, and basically this is where all of your global styles in your Angular 8 app are going to go, and we're going to be working within this section as well. So let's talk about the most basic and most fundamental element of an Angular app, which is components. All right, so think of components as the building blocks of your Angular app, and it consists of basically 3 elements. So I'm going to open up app component.ts. This is the main heart of your component. You can see there's several files here that says app component.ts. This is spec.ts. This is for testing. We're not going to be touching that at all. We have a style sheet specifically for this app component, and also the template as well. All right, so this component right here, as mentioned before, has 3 main sections. So we have the imports up at the top. I'm going to hit Control B to get rid of that sidebar. And then we also have the component decorator right here. And this is basically for various properties for your component. The component decorator includes locations to your component, the component template file, which is in reference to this file right here, and also the styles URL, basically for the CSS or the Sass, which is in reference to this file right here. All right. And then the third and one of the most important sections is the logic. The component logic resides right in this area right here. So basically, we're going to be working with these 3 elements to build out a very simple kind of demonstration app, so that I can demonstrate the most important building blocks going forward. So let's start off by creating like a nav bar. Right now, based on our project, this is what we have. All of this content is coming from right here, app component. So we're going to delete everything with exception to router outlet, and I will describe what that is momentarily. But if we save this and just hit ASDF and save it, we'll get that automatic reloading, and we can see our ASDF right there. So let's create the actual header. So we're going to type in header enter. I'm going to be using the Visual Studio Code's Emmet abbreviations to write out some of the HTML elements to make it go a little bit faster. I did do a crash course on Emmet abbreviations. You can just use my channel search to find that. So div, we're just going to have a div of container. So we just hit enter. There we go. And then we're going to have a link for a logo. So this is just going to go nowhere. And we're going to say class is logo. And we're just going to call this cool app, whatever. It's not very cool, trust me. And then we're going to have a nav element. with a UL element, with a LI element, and we will have a link inside of it. And the way, this is very Angular specific here, the way you link between your different components or your pages of your Angular 8 app is through router link, just like that. And then we specify where it should go. Next, we're going to hold Shift, Alt, and the down arrow key, and that will replicate the line. We're going to make this one list. Oh, and let's give this some anchor text, home. And I don't know why I named this list. I should have named it something more appropriate, but let's just name this one breweries. All right, and then we're going to wrap our router outlet between a container class as well. So let's take this. All right, so what is router outlet and what is this custom HTML element? Well, essentially, this is where the routed components are going to be displayed within our template. All right, so you're going to see how this works very shortly. For now, let's go ahead and save this, and we should see, there we go. This is what HTML looks like without CSS, which of course looks like garbage. So we're going to go ahead and focus on fixing that by working within the global style sheet, which is styles.scss or .sass. All right, so first of all, I'm going to be pasting just some of these. You can get the full code and the written version of this tutorial, by the way, which is linked in the YouTube description. We're going to import Nunito, which is the font I've been using lately. I know I'm not using Montserrat much anymore. And we're just importing it there. And we're going to have just one Sass variable. And we're just going to call that primary for our primary color. And then we're going to have another rule set here, margin 0 for the body, just font family, font size, you know, very basic stuff. Our container, we're going to say width 80% and margin 0 auto. And also, by the way, I am not bothering making this app responsive or anything like that. Not important enough for me. So we're starting to get somewhere there. So let's also work on the header. All right, so the header is going to have a background color of primary, and now you're going to see that color. I love that color. All right, and then we're going to have a padding of a 1EM and 0. So 1EM on the top and bottom, 0 on the right and left. We're going to also have a couple other rule sets here for the links. So color white to increase the contrast, text decoration none. We're also going to have our logo specifically, font weight, make that thing bold to reinforce that good old visual hierarchy. There we go. And then also we're going to have our nav element. So we're just going to, I'm going to float right this. Probably should use Flexbox. Old habits, you know. Don't worry, we're going to use Flexbox in a second. Style type is going to be none. So we don't want any of those bullets. Margin 0 and display flex. All right, so let's see what's happening so far. There we go. We're getting somewhere. All right, so also our LI elements, LIA rather, we're just targeting the anchor texts, so or the anchor elements. So padding 1EM, and then also and hover. Background is going to be darken. We're going to use the darken function. Primary just by 10%. So let's save it. There we go. Works well and looks well. Pretty good so far. All right, so after that, all we're going to do is just put an H1 element here, and we're going to say margin top 2EM. In that, I don't think is going to show anything just yet, but I'm adding that just for the future. So now let's talk about like how do we get these actual pages working when you click on them. All right, so that's when we have to talk about routing. So we're going to use the Angular command line interface to generate a route here. So let's click plus, cd my app. So we have a second window up here. The other one, ng-serve, is still running. And so then we're just going to type ng generate, or you could just put ng for shorthand. We want to generate a component. A component rather. I said we were going to be generating a route. I was wrong about that. I'm sorry. I meant a component. We're going to type in component or shorthand is C, and then the name of the component is home, and then NGGC list. So we're generating 2 components, and what it does is it creates 4 files: the template, the test, the TypeScript, which is the main component logic area, and also the SAS file. It also updates our app.module.ts file as well to add in this the component and get it ready within the app and make it accessible. So now we're going to visit the app routing file. So let's get our Control B sidebar open right here, and we're going to go to app-routing. All right, so whenever you have like a new route, like we're trying to use here with router link, they have to be added within this array right here in this routes array. But before you do that, you have to import it at the top. So we have 2 to import. So we have import home component. So the name is obviously based on the name that you gave it, whatever the name is that you gave it when you use the CLI to generate the component. So, and then it adds component at the end of it. And then from its location, which is, it puts it in a folder based on the name you gave it, and then home.component. All right, so it's kind of dimmed out here because we haven't yet used it. That's okay though. We're going to in a second. We're going to Shift Alt and down arrow key to replicate that line. This is going to be list component from list and list. And you can see them right here, by the way, of course. All right, so then we create our first object. So each route gets its own object within the array. And we're going to say path. This is going to be for a home component, and we're just going to make it empty. That means within this router link, or the router outlet rather, the component that has a path that's empty is going to be the one that loads first. So hopefully that makes sense there. Component is home component. Very simple. So now we'll go ahead and replicate that line, list, and this will be list component. There we go. So now if we go ahead and you save it, we click on, you can see it says home works and breweries list works. And of course, where is it getting that stuff from? Well, it's getting that from our home component where it just says home works, and it says the same thing for list as well. So now let's start talking about communicating data from to and from and to the component template in the component file itself. So let's go ahead and open up home here, and we're going to stick right here within the home component HTML. Let's get rid of that, and we're going to have an H1 that says welcome, and also we're going to have a div class as play container, and we're going to say paragraph here, you've clicked, and then we're going to have a span. This, technically I should have used a button for this, but I don't know, I'm lazy. You can still make it work anyways. We're going to have a click event, count click. I'll describe what this is in a second. And after that, we're going to say click counter. This is interpolation. I'll describe that as well. All right, so what's happening here? So basically, we have this right here. There's various events that this is referred to as event binding, and you wrap the name of the event in these parentheses within an attribute of, a form element or HTML element or whatever. We want a click event. There's a bunch of other events that you can do. You just type in Angular event binding types or something like that. You'll get a full list, like hover and all that stuff, or mouse out and all that. And then we're binding it to a method that doesn't yet exist, but we're going to create that in a bit. And so it's saying just call this method when this element here is clicked. And then this right here is simply how you display a property or a variable that's been defined from the component itself. So we're at home component. We haven't yet opened that file up, so it's right here. So if we define that property right here, then it's going to show up right here through these double curly braces right there. All right, so let's go ahead and visit that home. Let's save this first and visit the home component file. Let's create that property called click counter, and it's going to be a number, and we're going to set it to 0. So this is TypeScript, and it's a little bit different than defining JavaScript. And you don't have to use TypeScript, by the way, but it's purely optional. But it's a good idea to use it. Just down here, we're going to say count click, which is the name of the method that we referenced, and we're going to say this dot click counter plus equals 1. So it's just going to add 1 to the number up here each time this is called. Very simple stuff. Let's go ahead and, before we go and play it, let's add a couple rule sets though to our home component SAS file. So these SAS files is only specific to the HTML that's defined in its template over here. All right, so home component, we're going to have our span, and that's simple enough. I'm just going to paste this in. Font weight bold, background is light gray. I want to add user select none for this because it's a span element, and you can, when you click it just a little bit, it'll highlight the text, so this stops that. Let's save that. And then also we have play container. That's right here. We're going to have multiple of these classes or these elements used here to kind of just frame each of these little experiments we're doing. So we're just adding padding, border, margin bottom, and the input as well, which we haven't added yet. We're just styling for that. So let's go ahead and save that and give this a shot. Let's go back to home here. As you can see, you've clicked this 0 times, so that's one-way data binding because it's coming from the component logic where we defined that property, and it's going to our template. Now, if I click on this, there we go. So now we've been able to have an event binding, a click event binding that says, hey, call this method that we defined in the component logic, and then it updates it and then spits it back out right here to the template. And as you can see, it's instant. All right, so let's talk about two-way data binding. So the best way to demonstrate the concept of two-way data binding is to do it with a form element, usually an input. So let's visit our home component file once again, and we're going to have a div class of container. Let's just copy this. All right, get rid of that. All right, and we're going to have, let's see here, a p element and an input. Let's see. Actually, why would I put that in a p element? I don't even know why I did that initially. Oh well. What I'm going to do is put in right here. This is going to look a little strange. Brackets and then parentheses, ng model equals name. All right. Let's do a line break here, and then strong. We're going to say you said. And don't worry, I'll describe what's happening here in a second. Name. All right, so what's happening here is this ng model is going to allow for what's called two-way data binding, where this input property is going to both receive and also send information from and to the component logic in home component.ts. And we kind of demonstrate the proof of it working by showing the name property. All right, so you'll see how this works here just a second. In order for ng model to work though, let's save this. We have to visit our app.module.ts file. Here you can see our home components. This is the part where it said in our console where it said it updated. Well, we saved this so many times. Oh, actually, no, it was right here. Sorry. It updated these files right here. That's what it added. We're going to add our own import here, and that's going to be, we're going to import the forms module from Angular Forms, and then also add it here as an import in the imports array. So that's required for ng model to work, otherwise it won't work for that two-way data binding. All right, next we have to define the name property, which is right here. It's being referenced in our home component file. All right, so we're just going to add name. It's a string, and it's going to be empty. All right, so let's save this, and now it should work. So right here, there we go. All right, so if we were to update this code and say, hey, save it, it's going to show it here as well and here. All right, very, very cool. So now let's talk about ng template. So this will allow us to work with if and else based on templates as well. And so let me just show you, and this is of course is a use case that you're going to use probably a ton if you have any type of Angular app that you're serious about. So we're going to have another play container here. Let's get rid of all this stuff. And we're going to specify a ng template custom element here. And of course, this is specific to Angular 8. And we're going to wrap this in brackets, all right? And we're going to say ng if equals, and this is where we put in a template expression of some sort, like a Boolean value that's perhaps defined in the app component or the home component file. Or you can do click counter is greater than 4. So if it is, or if it's not, we can say ng if else none. So what does that mean? Well, you'll see in a second. So we're going to create another ng template, and this time we're just going to put the hashtag none. So this is in reference to this file right here, or this, not file, but statement right there. And what we're going to do is if this expression results to true, it's going to show whatever is inside of this particular ng template right here. If not, it's going to show it down here. All right, so we'll say we're just going to have a simple paragraph. The click counter is greater than 4. All right, and then we're going to say the click counter is not greater, wow, so original, than 4. All right, so now we'll save this, and it says the click count, I can't talk, the click counter is not greater than 4. Of course, this is true because it's 0. So if we click this, there we go. It's now 5, and it is greater than 4. Very, 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 very simple stuff. All right, so now that you understand how to use these templates, and of course you can get a little bit more in depth, and there's other things you can do, but that's the most basic usage. And of course, I don't want to go too far beyond that. So now let's talk about style binding. So sometimes you want to modify the appearance of your UI based on events that occur in your Angular app. So this is where class and style binding come into play. So we're first going to focus on style binding. So it's basically like inline CSS styles that are applied to the HTML elements. So let's go ahead and modify our last play container right here. And we're going to add style binding. And you do this through property binding, which is done through these brackets right here. We're going to say style dot, and then the name of the CSS property that we want to create this style binding on. So we'll say background color, so, as that is a valid CSS property name. So then we bind this to an expression of some sort. So we're just going to use the same one right here. So let me push this down a little bit. So if the click counter is greater than 4, and then we're going to use a ternary operator here. So question mark. So if it is greater than 4, then we're going to make the background color this value here. You can just make yellow, or you could put a hex color code or RGBA, all that stuff. Else, which is what that colon is for, we'll just say light gray, which is another value that background color can accept. All right, so that should be pretty good right there. Let's go ahead and save that. And let's go ahead and see if this works. There we go. So it's gray because that expression is not true. So if we go to 5, there we go. We've now just blinded you by that yellow background. All right, so what about the times when, for instance, you want to add multiple, or you want to change multiple CSS styles, not just one, like this one? Well, you can use what's called NG style. All right, NG style. So we change that there to NG style, and then we're going to completely change this up as well. So in here, we're going to have brackets, all right, and we're going to close that bracket right there. And we're going to say, first we put in the actual CSS property, background color, and then a colon. And then this is where our expression goes. So again, same old expression. There we go. And we'll say, just like we did before, yellow, light gray. And then we simply add a comma at the end of that, and we can add other ones. So let's do the border property. So we'll just do click counter. We'll say if it is greater than 4, we'll say 4 pixel solid black. Otherwise, none. So it won't have any initially until that. Let me make sure this is set up right with our things there. There we go. This looks solid right here. Let's save it. So now we can see there's no border, but if we go to 5, we have our border. Very exciting stuff. So now let's talk about our class binding. So this is style binding, but we can actually do the same concept except adding and removing classes and even multiple classes. But let's just first talk about doing just one class, and it's very simple. So we're going to take all this stuff and just delete it. We put in our brackets for property binding, and we're going to say class, and then the name of the class. Very simple. It's just like style binding. And so we're going to say click counter greater than 4, which is our expression that we've been using. So in order for this to work, in order for us to see it to work, we have to create this active class and add the rule set to our home component CSS file. So just at the bottom. So again, all we're doing is background color yellow, border 4 pixel solid black. All right, so make sure both files are saved, and there we go. Works just like that. The only thing that it works the same, but instead of just adjusting the specific CSS styles inline, we're doing it just by adding and removing a class. All right, so let's see about how we would do this with multiple classes. And this time we're going to work within the actual component file to do this. So what we do is we change this here to ng class. Remember, the other one was ng style. And we're going to this time reference a method, set classes, for instance. Let's save that and go right back to our home component file. And we're going to create that set classes. And we're going to say let my classes. So we're going to create an object here. All right. We're going to say the class that we want to add or remove based on the expression. So we're going to say this.clickCounter greater than 4. And then we just separate them for each one with a comma. So we'll have another class called not active. We're going to have to define that too in a second. This one's going to be less than or equal to 4. So it's kind of like the opposite. And then finally, we'll return my classes. All right, so to save that, we're going to go back to our, let's see, our SAS file, put in not active as background color light gray. All right, save it. And it's light gray, as you can see, and it works exactly as we anticipated. All right, so now that you understand some of the basic, the templating stuff and also the styling stuff as well, let's talk about services. So services basically are think of them just like special components that are reusable throughout your app. So we're going to create a service for the purpose of communicating with an API to fetch some data and then display it on our list page. So let's generate the service with our Angular CLI here. All right, so we're going to type in ng, G for generate, S for service, or you can just write out service as well. And then the name, we're just going to call it HTTP. All right, so it created these files right here. All right, so let's head on over here to our service file, HTTP service. It doesn't get its own folder in the case of a regular component. It just comes down here in the main app folder. And we can see that it looks kind of similar to the structure of a component, except it's importing an injectable instead of a component. And we can see the decorator is an injectable decorator. You really aren't going to mess with this stuff for a simple app, at least. It's all your work is going to go here in the component or the service logic in this section right here. So just to demonstrate in a very simple manner, then we'll actually get the HTTP stuff working. Just to demonstrate how this works, we're going to do something very stupidly simple. So we're going to create a my method here, and we're going to return just a console log. Hey, what is up? All right, so that's it. That's all our dumb method is going to do. Let's save this file, and then let's say we want to use this service in our list component. So let's head on over to our list component. And let's choose our component file here for list. And what we need to do now is first, we're going to go ahead and import that HTTP service up at the top. So the name is HTTP, and this is service from, and this is HTTP service. All right, and then we can reference this through what's called in the constructor through dependency injection. So we create an instance of it, private. I'm just gonna do underscore in the name HTTP. This can be whatever you want, and then HTTP service, which is referenced right here. So now we can use this throughout our component logic in order to access it. So ng on init right here is a lifecycle hook, and it's basically this, whatever code's inside of here runs when the component is loaded. All right, so we'll say this .http we can see it's showing up my method, and that's all we have to do. We're just calling that method from within the service file. So now we can go ahead and back here, and when we go to breweries and when we hit Control-Shift-I to get out the developer tools, guess what? There it is. Hey, what is up? That way we know that it is now working and communicating with that service from within this list component. All right, so now let's actually make this thing do something by connecting with a public API over here. And in order to do that, we're going to have to work with the Angular HTTP client, which allows you to do just that. So we're going to import HTTP client from Angular common HTTP. All right, so we have to actually use it as well. So again, once again, through dependency injection, private HTTP client. Now let's go ahead and rename this to get beer, because we're going to get breweries, a list of breweries essentially, and we're going to return this .http.get, and then this is where the API endpoint goes. For us and the one that we're using, that URL is right here, api.openbrewerydb.org breweries, and that's it. That's all our service is going to do. All right, so now we have a little bit of work to do, not much though, in our list component. All right, so you can see this is squigglied out because that doesn't exist. So now what we have to do, let's create an object that will hold all of the results that it returns from that API. We'll call this brews, and it's just going to be an object. More TypeScript stuff there. Then ng on init, we're going to change this to get beer, And because it returns an observable, we can subscribe to it. We're not really going to cover and get into that stuff. There's a ton of tutorials on what observables are and subscribing to them. But we just put in subscribe. We take the data, and then we can take our bruise object here and store that data. So this.bruise equals data. Let's also console log it, this.bruise, just for now, just so we can see that it's working. So make sure your two files are saved here, and let's go back. And let's go back to list. Oop, we have an issue. Oh yeah, we have to also, in order to use the HTTP client, just like we did with the forms module, we have to import it here in our app.module file. Sorry about that, completely skipped my mind. We're going to import HTTP client module from Angular Common HTTP right here. Then we take our HTTP client module and we add it here in our imports right there. So now if we save it and we go back and we click on breweries, of course we're not listing them out yet right here in the template, but we can see in the console we have a list of the breweries, which means it now works. Awesome. All right, so let's continue on, and let's go back to our component here, our list component. Actually, we're pretty much fine in that area. We just have to go to the list right there, the template file. So let's just change this to H1 breweries. It's a weird word to spell. I don't even know why I'm having an issue. Like, where you ever like spell a word and it like just looks wrong, even though it's simple? I don't know. All right, so we're gonna have a UL, and then this is also something new. It's very simple. It's unlike a template. The template conditionals that I showed you is for more robust, like when you have to show blocks. This is if you just want to add or remove a given HTML element, a single element. And you just do asterisk ng if, and then your template expression goes here. So we're going to say bruise if that exists. And this is something that you want to add, otherwise usually errors. And this basically means it'll show this UL element in its child elements if this works. If it's basically if bruise has been assigned and received data from the API. So then we're gonna have our list element items, and then we're gonna do another new thing, ng4, which allows you to iterate through an array of some sort, like an array of objects in our case. So ng4 equals let brew of bruise. All right, so we're going to refer to it here as brew, and bruise, of course, is the property that's holding all of the API data. And then inside of here, we'll have a P element for paragraph. Class is name for this one. We're going to do interpolation brew.name. And of course, because we console logged them out, we can see all this stuff. So there's name, and there's a bunch of stuff that it returns here. We're only going to do a few of them though. We're going to do 3. So country, and this last element is going to be an A. So a link. The href is going to be brew.website.url. All right. The class is going to be site. And this is going to just say site. That's all. And then usually you wouldn't have like a little icon for that, but I'm too lazy. Country. And that looks pretty good. So let's save this. Go back. Oh no. Closing p tag. There we go. Sorry about that. And there we go. Looks really ugly. So like, let's style that up so it doesn't look like trash. I'm sorry. It's the UI designer in me that just, we need to get that fixed. Head on over to list component.scss, and I'm going to paste this in. So there's not a ton here, but just to describe what's happening, we have our unordered list style type none, display flex wrap. You can go through this. This isn't a CSS tutorial, but yeah, you just check out the written tutorial if you want to paste that along as well. It's just basic stuff here, styling that area, and there you go. So there we go. Very, 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 very awesome. We're not done yet though, because now we have to cover real quickly deployment if you want to deploy your Angular app, which of course, if you're serious about a project, you will in some regards or some manner. So let's go here to our console or command line, and I'm going to type in ng build -- prod, which is for production. So that will minify the app as much as possible, and it creates a distribution or a dist folder, dist folder in the project, and we'll probably see that right now if we get out this area. It's still going through. I'm just going to wait for a second. You can see based on the sizes here too, they're all pretty small. It's just about done. There we go. Now it is done. Okay, so now if we come up here, we'll see our dist folder, and we can see that it has my app inside of it. So if you want to see, if you're actually trying to run this app, the production version of the app and not the one that's just currently being served, let's go ahead and get out of here. Control C, hit yes to end that job right there. We'll come back here and we'll use something called Light Server, which will allow you to launch a real quick local server using your local files. If you don't have that installed, npm i-g light-server will install that. I already have it installed, so I'm not going to run it. And let me make this a little bit bigger and also move it so that I'm not on top of it with my overlay. And now we're going to hop into the folder, which is cd dist and my app, and then just run light-server. All right, so now it is running the server, or running from our production build rather. And of course it works exactly the same as we would expect. Very, very cool stuff. So at this point you have a number of options of actually deploying it to somewhere like GitHub Pages, Netlify, your own hosting, and it's basically this particular distribution folder that it will be loading. And we'll get up, perhaps I will release another video where I run through some of the more popular options of how to launch or deploy your Angular app in different settings, including GitHub Pages, Netlify, and maybe a custom server environment. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. We covered a lot, and of course there's a lot we didn't cover as well, but I think, you know, being a beginner in this is probably the point to where you should stop and then try to go ahead and recreate what you learned, just so you can commit the real fundamental stuff to memory. All right, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. Definitely check out the sponsor, linode.com, and I'll see you guys real soon. Goodbye.